Action. Hello everyone, thanks so much for being here. We are incredibly excited to show you the final outcome of our semester, SEGO.
This project represents months of research, iteration, and rethinking what it actually means to go out on campus.
We're going to walk you through the whole process today, from the initial spark to the final design. But first, let's meet the team.
My name is Ellis Ivory, and I'm a multidisciplinary designer and musician.
I'm Archie. I'm a soft goods designer, and when I'm not in studio, you'll usually find me running, climbing, or skiing.
I'm Ben. I'm a product designer focused on sound design and speakers, and I love to throw events.
So, to understand why we built SEGO, you have to first understand the concept of a third space. So, what is a third space?
Essentially, your first space is home. Your second space is work or school, depending on where you are in your life. And a third space is an essential social environment in between those two spaces that requires no obligation to attend.
It's where you go to connect and relax without the pressure of feeling productive. But looking at the University of Utah, we realized that there isn't a centralized intentional space for that.
And that gap is exactly why we created SEGO.
To get there, we use the Double Diamond Framework. The Double Diamond Framework is a 4-step process of diverging and converging steps labeled Discover, Define, Develop, and Deliver. In the Discover phase, you question things, you challenge biases, and you brief yourself for the next step, Define, which is where you compile unstructured research to converge and try and understand your problem. At the end of the design phase, you develop strategy to go into the developing phase, which is another diverging phase where you try new things, you get your first ideas out, and you start to look at potential solutions. The deliver phase is the final phase where you put answers, solutions, and products together to solve the problem.
So, we started by asking what actually makes a third space successful.
We didn't just guess. We conducted site visits across Salt Lake City and Denver, Colorado, studying 12 different spaces across 4 categories.
First, we looked at college grunge. These spaces taught us that perfection is overrated. Graffiti, dim lighting, and worn-in materials make a space feel approachable and comfortable.
Then we explored upscale bars. We realized that just removing alcohol isn't enough. You need some level of craft and intentionality within the experience itself.
We also visited wellness spaces. They showed us how to create a slower, more mindful social environment through specific rituals, like the way people gather for wellness shots.
And finally, music venues, my favorite. This was huge. One owner told us, "You're paying for the space 24/7, so use it." It taught us that programming and events are what keep a space alive.
So next, we moved into the define phase, where we sat down with experts to stress test our ideas.
Our first expert was Chris Marshall, the owner and founder of Sam's Drybar in Austin, Texas. When we talked to Chris, he told us that most dry bars tend to fail not because of their alcohol-free menu, but because of their lack of programming. Customers often want alternate things to do and things to engage with in the absence of alcohol. Our second expert was Kevin Berg of Lynx Architectural Lighting in LA. We talked to Kevin to find out what the best strategy for lighting a space like SEGO would be, and his advice was to not cheap out. He said, invest in your lighting from the beginning of your architectural plan, considering where lights are going and what type of lights are going there. He said you get what you pay for with light fixtures, and if you get the worst ones, you're going to have the worst lighting. Brad Newberger was our final expert. He's the owner and founder of Ambient IQ in Los Angeles, California. His advice to us was that we should really consider the positioning of the speakers in our space, and also to not cheap out because people hate low quality sound and don't want to be stuck in a shoebox that sounds poor.
On to our student questionnaire, where we talked to over 70 plus students. 74% of them were looking for an on-campus third space. 66% of them were interested in attending a ticketed event, like concerts or trivia. But only 38% of them were interested in a quote-unquote dry bar. So our key insight is the term dry bar negatively impacts perception. SEGO is not a dry bar. SEGO is a third space and event-driven venue that happens to be alcohol-free.
So now on to our developments. First, we start with our aesthetic determinations. We had a range of different brand aesthetics and bar aesthetics that we surveyed to people. One of them was Source, more of a wellness, botanical type of feel, more in that health and wellness space. Next was Hydrated. It's more punky, more that college grungy vibe, lockers, graffiti, Pie Underground, all that. Next we have Mach 21, which is a more of an upscale vibe, seasoned, dark type of space. The name Mach 21, mocking 21 and up places. So we have Delight, a bit more corporate vibes, cafe type of deal, office aesthetics, all that jazz. And finally we landed with SEGO. It's chic, it's trendy, it's energetic, it's creative. It's performance and health focused, it's bright, it's vibrant.
We did a survey which targeted the freshman class as they were the demographic most likely to be attending an on-campus nightlife space. And after over 40 results on our second questionnaire, SEGO was a clear winner. And in our deliver phase, we ended up coming up with some solutions, some answers, some products for what SEGO would look and feel like, and we did this in the form of a brand book.
For our final deliverable, we've created a brand book. Our brand book takes you through different sections of branding. We talk about SEGO, about the SEGO brand. We talk about our target audience, about our competition, about our brand voice, and about our visual branding. So about SEGO. SEGO starts with the SEGO lily, the state flower of Utah. SEGO lily derives from the Shoshone word meaning edible bulb. The SEGO lily pays homage to both Salt Lake City and the University of Utah. And this brand book essentially is the culmination of our semester's worth of research on nightlife, social spaces, and the wants and needs of the modern student. We have explored case studies for many alcohol-free social spaces and have determined that the nexus of their success is in fact not the lack of alcohol, but the multitudes of alternate value that the spaces bring to social life through programming, events, health, considerate menus, and more. SEGO's goal is to consider and combine these findings in a way that students find appealing and of value to their complex social structures.
And here's our brand. The mission statement. SEGO is the first social space on the University of Utah campus that is designed by students for students. SEGO is an expression of community.
Our vision statement is SEGO should live at the intersection of higher education and artistic ambition. SEGO should exist not only for the University of Utah student, but the student who wishes to experience a more curated and artful experience at the University of Utah. SEGO aims to say, you don't need to leave campus in search of inspiration.
At SEGO, we value community. At SEGO, we value ambition. At SEGO, we value the intellectual. At SEGO, we value creativity. At SEGO, we value nuance. At SEGO, we value the student.
Our brand book materials start here. This is our mock proposed calendar where we have events like inviting the Killins, a local Utah band, to play, very popular with students. Our menu comes next with specialty drinks that were researched throughout all of the Salt Lake City area, going to various bars and picking their non-alcoholic drinks and finding out which ones were the best. And in Denver, going to a lot of different non-alcoholic bars. Here's a bit of our napkins and branding.
Yeah, this is a map of the possible sound programming, or I guess sound installation for the space. You can see there's ceiling mounted speaker pods above a lot of the more slow paced sitting space. And then as you get towards the, I guess you could call it dance floor and stage area, the more open floor plan, there's a lot of wall mounted monitor speakers that push sound out into the open space and kind of cross over to make sure that everybody can hear well. And then on pretty much every open wall, you can see the wall panels that Ben mentioned earlier that are good for noise dampening but don't sacrifice the aesthetic qualities of the space.
And here's our proposed lighting. We have gel lights on a mount bar, under bench lighting, really accentuating like the ambience of the space. We have recessed LED cans in the bathrooms and by the bar, just to have like a very low, dim lit, beautiful space. So who's our competition? Well, on our search around Salt Lake City, we found Lake Effect. It's a good example of a hybrid space. They have 3 floors and 3 different vibes: live jazz, a DJ, etc.
A second space we found is the International Lounge, which Ben headlined the other night.
It was beautiful.
The International Lounge is a bar and venue that doesn't take itself super seriously. It has the capacity to bring in smaller artists and smaller crowds and have a more community-fostered experience in live music.
Our third is Kilby Court, which is a case study on how a small space can have big energy. The relatively small property is able to host lively and fun events that retain fans.
And lastly is Mother. It's a coffee shop by day and a bar by night, and shows the value of maximizing the open hours of a space and how a cohesive brand can be made for 2 spaces under 1 roof.
So our strong consideration for our competition is what makes a student stay on campus when they could leave campus for a bar that does serve alcohol. So we've sort of illustrated a brand map that shows our ideal placement amongst this local competition in downtown Salt Lake City. The brand positioning map aims to visualize SEGO's identity in the 4 pillars of nightlife space: community, bar identity, event capacity, and exclusivity. So Archie, what's our brand voice?
Ellis, I'm so glad you asked. The student voice is actually at the core of SEGO. In our communications, we must remain relatable rather than corporate. Students are looking for a third space on campus that is free of judgment. Our voice needs to reflect our humility. Our voice needs to be fun and humorous. We must communicate human to human. We're not a corporate company or a chatbot.
It's true. And here's our brand persona. We're leaning more on the informal side. We're to the point. We're funny. We're hip. We're young. We're outgoing. And we're humble.
So here's a bit about our visual brand identity. So for color, SEGO is chic, SEGO is trendy, SEGO is energetic. And for these reasons, we have chosen a bold orange as our primary color, coupled with a bright white and balanced with a muted black and gray.
They're all usable together or separate. The only real rule with the branding of the logo is that you don't swap the color between the mark and the logo type.
The SEGO brand book was how we converged a semester of discovery into a plan for action, starting with the mission and vision, to a brand voice, to a visual identity of the space, and operational guidance. We aim to provide consistency across the entire SEGO experience.
So yeah, these are some of our final renderings of what SEGO could look and function like. The first rendering is a possible external rendering. We've discussed with Mark and other people at the Marriott Institute what this building is going to look like. The chances are the entrance would be through a parking lot or a parking garage of some type. So our first render was maybe more of a open air parking lot entrance and what that could look like. The second render is a parking garage entrance entering from inside of another building already. This is a rendering of the stage. A huge part of SEGO's identity is the ability to host events and specifically student music. So the stage is a very important thing to be able to visualize and understand for SEGO. This is just a fun rendering of how you could continue that brand identity into every space, including the bathroom, through stuff like bright orange porcelain, neon signs. You can really further the brand by kind of injecting it into every corner of the space.
And lastly is our SEGO lobby and entryway. Just keeping an open door policy for anybody who wants to come in. So that brings us to our next steps. What are we wanting to do with all this info that we have gathered? To begin, we would love to have a physical copy of a brand book that we could give to an architect or the Marriott Junior Institute to have sort of a pathway of how this sort of space would work on campus. And that leads us to our final question.
Yeah, our final question is, what if a social space on campus wasn't centered around alcohol, but still felt just as engaging, social, and alive as a lot of popular alcohol-based social spaces?
Thank you, SEGO enthusiasts.